Daniel McCulloch last updated 1947, May 25, 2018. Australia's Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton has previously suggested taking up NZ's offer of resettling 150 refugees would restart illegal boat arrivals. Now it seems Australia is willing to consider keeping NZ's offer on the table. Australia's Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton is willing to consider a New Zealand offer to resettle some refugees held in offshore detention, but only if they're banned from ever going to Australia. Dutton has floated the prospect in a bid to pressure Australia's Labor opposition into supporting stalled legislation that would stop anybody who arrived by boat from ever reaching Australia's shores. We would have a look at ways in which we would utilise the offer of 150 places, Dutton told Sky News on Friday. The detention centre on Manus Island in Papua New Guinea. However, he raised the recent interception of a boat carrying 131 asylum seekers from Malaysia to New Zealand to highlight what he said was the ongoing threat of people smuggling. Read more. Jacinda Ardern reconfirms offer to take 150 refugees from Australian detention centres. Human smuggling ring to New Zealand busted. Jacinda Ardern walking a tightrope on asylum seekers. Jacinda Ardern steps up pressure on Malcolm Turnbull over refugee offer. Manus Island, the least unsafe place for detainees could be. Damning Nauru report shows NZ must take refugees. Amnesty International with that one boat you would take up an entire one-year offer from New Zealand, Dutton said. Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway said Australia is free to stop the asylum seekers from entering the country from New Zealand, if it wanted. Immigration Minister Ian Lees-Galloway said on Thursday Australia was free to stop the asylum seekers from entering the country from New Zealand if it wanted. Ultimately, responsibility for who can come into any sovereign nation is the responsibility of that nation, he said. It's over to Australia to determine who can and cannot come into their country. Former Australian Border Force Commissioner Roman Quadvleg said genuine efforts were being made inside the Malcolm Turnbull government to find a solution to the blistering problem. On Friday, Lees-Galloway said his position had not changed and he had no further comment. Australia's Labor Party said the Home Affairs Minister could already ban people from entering the country based on character grounds, including through specific visa provisions blocking anybody involved in people smuggling. If the government was able to negotiate conditions for the US deal, they should be able to negotiate them for any deal with New Zealand, Australia's opposition immigration spokesman Shane Neumann said. But Dutton dismissed the claims. Shane Neumann somehow is suggesting that the 50,000 people that came on 800 boats are all people smugglers. It's a complete nonsense, Dutton said. The fact is that we put a bill before the Parliament which would have stopped people coming from New Zealand to Australia. Labour refused to support it in the Senate. The opposition has described the 2016 legislation as poorly drafted and laden with unintended consequences. Meanwhile, the former head of Australia's efforts to stop boatloads of refugees coming has described offshore detention as an insoluble mess dividing the Labour Party. The country's opposition MPs have been ducking questions about whether a Labour government would impose time limits on offshore detention. Former Australian Border Force Commissioner Roman Quadvleg said genuine efforts were being made inside the Turnbull government to find a solution to the blistering problem, and described Labour's plans as ambiguous. Labour needs to be clear-eyed in its expression of border policy because any softness, any wavering in its solidarity, will undoubtedly be used as a people smuggler's marketing ploy, Quadvleg wrote in Fairfax Media. Newly installed Australian Border Force Chief Michael Outram also warned smugglers were watching the words and actions of political parties and agencies for indications of shifts in policy. Up and stuff.